guys, welcome to Truth Talkin' Thursday. We are Jim and Jane, and we're back for another round here. Last week we kind of left off, we were talking about spirituality, and we were talking about why it's become so unimportant. And I know that we mentioned this week about, that we wanted to talk about the things that it affects, the lack of spirituality affects. But I really feel like Jim mentioned last week that he had some near-death experiences, and you got to hear this. You really do. So, Jim, can you just share with us, please?
Well, this is I need to probably preface this by saying that this is in no way our attempt to kind of proselytize. We're not out gathering souls and all this kind of stuff. We got talking about this last week, Jane and I, and she's just asked me to kind of go over it, and I think it does tie into what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, and what we're all about here as a couple of interviewees. I won't go into a lot of detail about a whole bunch of this stuff, but I'll try and catch the high points. Once upon a time, when I was in my early 40s, life was a bit chaotic and difficult for me, and of my own making. And one thing led to another: substance abuse, alcohol dependence, drug dependence. There wasn't an awful lot of kind of chemical stuff that I didn't try at least once or twice. The upshot of that whole thing is my marriage fell apart. I lost my business, and a son had moved out at that point, and I had a little girl, and she was about 2 at this point, somewhere in around there. Anyway, my marriage fell apart, and I found myself one day driving along a highway, a major highway in the area, in a little car, and I felt so dark and saddened and depressed and so on and so on and so on, that I made a conscious decision to end my time on the planet, we'll say. And it was going to be easy enough. I was just driving along the highway, a busy highway, and I just crossed the center line and found myself in the opposite direction, going a fair speed and heading toward a nasty sized truck. Figured that would be big enough to kind of do the job, and so on, and so I proceeded to kind of attempt to do that. The next thing I remember, and this kind of sounds kind of hokey, and believe me, it's not hokey at all. It's and it is the truth in terms of how it all happened and what went down that day for me. And I don't know whether people have had an experience like this or not. But anyway, the next thing I recall in my stupor sort of thing was I'm back on the right side of the road, parked on the shoulder of the road, and sitting in my car idling. And I have no recollection, no idea of how I got there. Obviously I drove there, but it wasn't a conscious decision to do it. And so I went from a time where I was looking at becoming a grill ornament on a Big Mac truck to sitting on the side of the road and contemplating what I was going to do next. And I don't believe in coincidence. I never have, never will. So it was no coincidence that I ended up there. Some people would say maybe it was divine intervention. I tend to believe it was, and I was not a church-going guy at that point in time. Religion had defeated me or had left me in the wake or whatever, but religion and I did not get along. But anyway, I found myself along the side of the road, and I can't put it down to anything else other than that. So anyway, things went from that place. I immediately, when I became aware of where I was, I immediately felt a peace and a calm that I had never experienced before. And I made my pact, not with anybody or anything or any entity, but I made a pact with myself at that point that I would do all I could to make sure that I didn't go back down the same roads that I was doing, not literally speaking, of course, in my car, but to change my lifestyle dramatically so that I can get more out of life than what I had been attempting to do. And I had my little daughter at the same time too, and she was not that she was a driving force, but she's she was just a magnificent little human being who deserved to have more of a father than I was giving her. So I think there was a lot of reasons why I made the choices I did. The point, I guess, of the whole thing here is, for me, is that when I made the decision to alter my lifestyle, not knowing what I was going to do, how I was going to get there, the most amazing things happened. And everywhere I went, and every time I kind of came up against a challenge of some kind, I kept my wits about me, and I looked at whatever assets, and as minimal as they were at the time. I put together all the things that I could, but the universe just kind of seemed to favor me in some way. Every time I had a challenge was met somehow. When I got out of I went to a treatment program because I felt that that was the way to go. I needed some guidance and some peace and time away. I got that. Applied to a place that didn't have a space, and 2 days later somebody backed out, and I got a call and said I could come if I wanted to, and I was there. When I went looking for a place, a little apartment to live in, I got a little spot, and it was given to me by the manager of the place, the little business that owned the building, and never should have got the apartment because I didn't have a job, I didn't have any references, but they took a chance, and I got the place and fixed it up, and it was a great little spot. It just, every time I needed something, it happened. And I can't explain that other than to say that I worked, I did all the things that I promised myself I would do, and I made every effort to make it a different experience than what it was destined to be. So I think the message kind of thing is one, don't ever sell yourself short. Two, never give up. Never give up. If I could have given up with just cause at any time during that whole thing, but something just kept telling me that if I kept going one foot after the other, after the other, after the other. So I went back to college. I got an education out of it, and I worked at the first place that I had an opportunity to co-op out of the college program I was involved in. I worked there for 23 years, 24 years. I retired from there about 8 years ago, and if I had to listen to everybody else, I would have quit probably a long time before I did. So you have to listen to your own heart beating and your own kind of spiritual existence, and you do have one, I have one, everybody has one. You just have to be able to tune into it and give it a chance to kind of direct your life. But that's what I did. I had nothing to lose when I made these decisions, these choices, and life worked out pretty well for me. So, and then I met Jane along the way, and here we are. So I'm extremely grateful to all the people that put their hand out to me, and so I put my hand out to others. It's just that's the way it works. That's the way it's supposed to work, and that's what we're doing. So if that resonates with you in any way, shape, or form, great. You got any questions that you wanna ask behind closed doors, kind of thing? Just get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to chat with you or contribute whatever it is you're looking for from us. So I think you get a hold of me by jim.lifechoice@gmail.com, and Jane, you would get a hold of Jane by...
I'm just jturdick@hotmail.com.
There you go.
So
either one of us be happy to get back to you. It's private, it's confidential, all that sort of thing, but if you got some questions, don't hesitate to ask them, and we'd be happy to help you out if we can.
thank you so much, Jim, for sharing that. I for one, am an example of Jim reaching out his hand to somebody. I feel like I've learned an awful lot from... I think I mentioned on our very first chat about how you challenge me to think, and I love that. I love being able to think. I don't have the same experience Jim did. Most of my experiences came from being, I want to say, crushed in an abusive situation, and I feel like it's great looking back. I'm thankful for having gone through that, because I feel like I would not have the desire to think the way I do if I had not been through that. I read somewhere recently, I've done a lot of reading lately, and my mind just goes all the time, it seems like, but it mentioned about thinking inside the box. And there are those that say, well, think outside the box. But I loved how this explained thinking inside the box. If you're not stuck inside the box, you have no desire to get out. And I liked that. I thought that was really neat, because that's how I was raised, under the umbrella of certain expectations and goals and right and wrong. And those things all have their place. They do. When you belong to a group or a team, there needs to be certain guidelines and rules in order for the expected outcome. The bottom line is, if you can learn it, you can unlearn it. And it's so important to remember who you are and where you came from. So we don't want to drag this out too much longer, but the bottom line is, I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That helps me to sort through my own situation. So next week we'll talk about what spirituality affects. How about that?
Yep, we could do that.
All right. So have a great week, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for stopping by.